Before we begin, first and foremost condolences. Now, Thomas Nutt was described by a top judge as a bully who got off on manipulating and controlling any woman he had been in relationships with. Such a bully and an out-and-out bad person was Thomas was that he had k'd his wife on the day of what was supposed to be the start of their forever life, their wedding day. They had only been married for a few hours, and then he had bent her up in an odd shape and then stuffed her in a suitcase. This was after breaking bones. The 46-year-old had launched a devastating attack on his then wife, 52-year-old Dawn Walker. Bolton Crown Court heard that Thomas had closed his hands into a fist, drew his strongest hand backward, and with full force struck Dawn, pelted her. Dawn was propelled backwards, and then while down on the ground, red leaking and the side of her face swelling, Thomas towered over his wife, his face contorted into a grimace, all wicked and evilness etched into the deep wrinkles of his ugly face. Thomas, whom was frothing at the mouth and says to be foaming, was so angry that when he bent over his wife, he then wrapped his hands around Dawn, neck area, and squeezed until she sputtered and coughed and struggled to draw breath until she was dead. Reports say that in the aftermath of the Thomas had snapped Dawn's leg to fit her into the suitcase. That suitcase was then left in the airing cupboard where Thomas had planned his next move, and that included decorating his home. Thomas had just committed an Now Thomas eventually took the suitcase, while Dawn, still inside, travelled to a field behind his house and then launched that suitcase over a fence in a field by a bush. Dawn was not found until 4 days later, and that was by a neighbour, and you can imagine how distraught they were. When Dawn's family questioned Thomas Nutt as to where Dawn was, Thomas explained that Dawn needed alone time. Her mental health had been triggered once again, and Thomas explained Dawn would come back when she was ready to. Thomas still kept hold of Dawn's mobile, and he sent out bulk messages, a number of messages reassuring her family that she was okay, and please just to give her space. Of course, Thomas had pretended to be Dawn. So twisted was Thomas Nutt that he even went to Dawn's youngest daughter and gave a BAFTA-winning performance, crying and snotting, asking her to help him look for Dawn, as he was worried. Now there was evidence to say that Thomas was a manipulator, a man that commanded complete control over his woman, and he had controlled Dawn Walker for a number of years according to her family. Thomas had told Dawn what to wear, what to eat, where she could go, who she could speak to and associate with. Thomas was her only friend, and she had been isolated from her own family for at least 3 years before the Judge Rose had commented, Dawn Walker died by your hands because you are a bully, used to get in your own way with women, and used your considerable size advantage to batter women. You deemed it necessary and considered it teaching your woman a lesson. Thomas Nutt had k'd Dawn Walker, his wife and mother of 3, just hours after their wedding day, when the newlyweds returned to their home in Shirley Grove, Lightcliffe, which was near Halifax in West Yorkshire, on the night of October 27, 2021. In order to distance himself from the heinous crime, Thomas called police on October 31st and officially declared his wife missing. Thomas told police officers that he had gone on their 2-day honeymoon to Skegness of all places, where they stayed in a caravan in a lay-by. Thomas says that the couple had spent their days walking and also watching DVDs. However, at some point, Dawn had walked out of the caravan. Thomas then explained that he drove around Brig House that morning looking for her. So, of course, police launched an investigation and reported Dawn as a missing woman, and they did complete follow-up checks. When police checked out Thomas's claim, they did not find any evidence or witness to support that the couple had travelled to Skegness. There was no photos together, no receipts from coffee shops, and there were no captured CCTV movements roaming the seaside area. What was uncovered, however, was once Thomas had k'd his wife and then broke the bones to fit her in the suitcase, and then put that suitcase in the airing cupboard, Thomas had taken out Halloween decorations and began to decorate the house as if it was the most normal thing to do, according to family members. Thomas then tried his best to act as a loving husband, going place to place with a photo of Dawn, canvassing the area, and asking people, "Have you seen my wife? Please, have you seen my wife? I need to find her. She's been missing." All the while, he had known what he had done, and Thomas's lies were eventually uncovered when police found CCTV. Footage showed a mad Thomas Nutt wheeling a large suitcase out of the back of the house of the couple's modest home and then leaving it in a bush minutes before police officers had knocked on the front door to talk to Thomas about the missing person report that Thomas had filed. The suitcase was later found by a neighbour 4 days later, whom immediately then dialed 999. A witness described how Thomas and Dawn's relationship was far from perfect. It was fragile and filled with arguments and fights. The witness described often seeing Dawn with black eyes and welts and also swollen eye sockets and cheekbones and also bruising, which was described as heavy and also purple, blue and black, and a lot of swelling. When Thomas was arrested, Andy was told by police officers that he had been charged with the M of his wife. The 46-year-old madman then admitted his guilt. He admitted that he had killed his wife and pled guilty to manslaughter, but he did deny the M. Thomas told police officers in the interview room, "Dawn was bipolar and was sad and depressed. We came back home from the wedding and she says that she wanted to get a divorce. She started screaming it," Thomas claimed, "and I struck her to the face and put my hands on her, gripping her neck. When a pathologist examined Dawn, they noticed severe neck injuries, which showed that the pressure applied by Thomas had to have been his max strength." Thomas still claimed that he loved his wife and how he had lost his temper in a moment of madness. In court, before sentencing, the prosecution took a moment to detail the final moments of Dawn's life, saying that what should have been the happiest time of Dawn's life was instead marked by absolute tragedy when she met her death at the hands of the man she had been married to for a matter of 6 or 7 hours. When Thomas had gripped Dawn by the neck, he had absolute intention to cause serious injuries, or worse still, kill Dawn. Thomas Nutt defense team attempted to counter the accusations by saying that there was no evidence to support that the incident was premeditated and he actually intended to kill his wife. At the end of the trial, Thomas Nutt was found guilty of the M and he was jailed for life. Thomas was told by the judge that he would have to serve a minimum term of 21 years in jail before being considered for early release. Now, a woman who was probably a family member sat in the gallery and they shouted, "Thank you, Your Honour, thank you." Still to this day, it's ironic how Thomas Nutt has still claimed that he loved his wife and his actions were nothing more than a moment of madness. Now remember, Thomas Nutt was a serious manipulator. He looked at women as if there was a commodity and less than him, so it was only natural that Dawn was supposed to obey his every command, and when she didn't or she fell short of his expectations, he decided that he had had enough, and to fix that problem, he had killed her, and then put her in a suitcase. Condolences. Stay safe.